streaming. A few seconds. All right, everybody. Hey, guess what? It's Education with Ed, and yeah, it is actually having Ed here, and he will explain what's been happening to where he was unable to show up and be like he has been, or as much as he's willing to explain. But before that, I want to say it is Sunday, December 23rd, 2018. It is currently 5:01 Pacific Standard Time, PM. So, Ed, why don't you take it away and explain to everybody why you had a nice holiday?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, let me explain to you. Anyhow, good evening and welcome, and thank you all for joining us again for numerous education. And that's the one thing, is to comprehend what the education of the Constitution is versus statute, codes, and administrative rules, and knowing what the separation and differences are, and including with our flags and the meaning of our country. The one thing I've been enjoying with, the corporation president coming out with the 14th Amendment, admitting that the 14th Amendment was never passed and ratified. We do have the instruments and documents that are on new.org and trackers and on our Facebook sites that have been out, so that way you can read them yourself. We can prove the stuff. Every time we do something here, we prove the facts, all right? We don't have time for hearsay, administrative rules, or opinions. Opinions are like diapers, need to be changed regularly, and just like politicians should be changed regularly, and that is by the 1787 amended Constitution structure. And please read the Constitution, because 1787, they actually put Immigration Act in place 5 or more generations. This is not a joke, folks. I mean, our forefathers thought about this. Remember, they came from foreign countries before they came to this country. All right, so they came from foreign countries to this country. They already lived the hell with all their other religion structure, the murders, the Christianity, every other religion, and the point was they wanted to get rid of, so that way, get away from that, so you had freedom. So that way you could do what you want, hunt, fish, survive, and keep your family. And that's the point of getting it, so we can educate ourselves back, so we know how to protect ourselves, and so this way we know how to protect our families. And the reason why I've been really up and down and out the last few weeks and stuff, I've been in and out because of my heart and lungs issues. I've had my lungs shut down a few times here again lately. Since my lungs have shut down since last couple months, I've been in and out of the hospital, I don't know, 5, 6 times because of lung and heart failure, and they had to zap me and all this stuff. I almost ended up with a new heart or pacemaker because I ended up in surgery a few days ago. And instead of being here right now where I'm talking to you, I would have been in for heart surgery, and I'm glad that I didn't have to go through that or go through where they had to reshock my heart and try to get the rhythm. The medication brought me back together, so that way I wasn't still in the hospital right now today. So, and that's the one thing that people need to pay attention is your health, your circumstances, and what goes on. I mean, we're all tough and we're all macho and, we all have our instincts, but we got to pay attention to our body. And we all been there. So that's the whole point. Now, I want to get into the one video. I want to get into the 17th Amendment because I wasn't able to do that last week, but I want to get into the 17th Amendment. I want to explain some real facts here to the reality of people's minds compared to what you think your decisions that you might think that you have a right to vote. In all this structure, everybody goes, oh, be a registered voter. No. You're a registered voter. That means you have no rights. All right? That means you're obligated to pay taxes as a registered voter because you're willing to take on the debts of foreign agents called your elected and public servants. You're willing to give your house, your jewelry, your assets, and your children's lives for their comfort. All right? This goes all the way back to canon law. And this is the way the reality of the world works. Stop living in fantasy beliefs. Start living in reality of what's going on. That's why we do recommend a movie called Interstate 60 that explains your court system. It's pretty damn good. It's a good movie. And I do recommend that strongly, that people watch that movie and pay attention to the words in the movie. And also, too, in the movie is always tell people or suggest to people, because I can't tell you what to do, suggest to people step out of the movie, watch the production, and watch the background of movies. And you get to watch how posters are placed and the angles of things and the way things are put in the background of movies, because those things are subliminal messages and they catch your mind, and you don't realize how strong that influence has to you for that split second that really flashes in front of your eyes, that, basically hits your memory bank that stays there. So, but anyhow, let's get on with this video dealing with Mr. Hughes, and then I'll get into Mr. Hughes as we end the video, and then we'll go from there.
Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History. Watch out, 17th Amendment, I'm coming to get you. Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History. Watch out, 17th Amendment, I'm coming to get you. As we continue with the Constitution for Dummies series, taking a look at the words and the meaning of the Constitution, so wherever you stand on the issues of the day, you stand smart, or maybe you're just studying for an exam. I don't really care. All I know is I'm about to do some teaching, and if you hang out, you'll do some learning. So giddy up, here we go. All right, let's take a look at the words of the 17th Amendment, and then we can break it down. Orchestra, music.
The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof, for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislatures. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as the legislature may direct. This amendment shall not be construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes valid as part of the Constitution.
So the words itself, guys, in its most basic form, is direct democracy for the Senate. If you're having trouble remembering numbers, just spell the number 17. This is so stupid. S-E-V, right? Just stop it with the S-E, and at least you'll get to the issue of the Senate. But I'm much more interested in the meaning. So what this basically is going to change is Article 1, Section 3, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution. In the original Constitution, the Senate, which is kind of the representation of states in the Congress, and really a benefactor to the small states because each state gets 2. Rather than having the state legislatures choose those senators, which was the way up to 1913, the people of that state by popular vote, by democracy, will choose it. So in a sense, we're moving from indirect democracy, because the people chose the state legislatures, I guess, to direct democracy. Now the second part of the 17th Amendment also changes the way that vacancies are dealt with. In the original Constitution, if there was a vacancy, the state legislature had to choose the new appointment, and there could be a great lapse of time in there. So the thought was, maybe we should direct away so if there's a vacancy, it gets filled really quick so the state doesn't lose its representation in Congress. So therefore, it gives the state legislatures the authority to give the governor the ability to direct that, to pick somebody, until the legislature schedules a new election so it could be popular vote again, still sticking to that original direct democracy. So that's the 17th Amendment, right? Direct democracy for the people and the vacancy issue. So let's take a look at the history. History! Where are you? So the 17th Amendment was first proposed in 1823, and it garnered support as kind of this ideal of democracy, that America is about expanding democracy, so why not expand it to the Senate? And certainly the underlying issues were corruption for many, and the idea that the Senate was kind of the elite branch of government, that they were the special interest branch that basically bought their seats from state legislatures. Andrew Johnson, president after Abraham Lincoln, was a big supporter of the 17th Amendment. And then as we get to the end of the 1800s, we really see the birth of populism. And populism is kind of a people's movement to kind of garner more power for democracy. We see this in state initiatives and referendums, the direct primary. And I believe there were upwards of 10 or 15 states that already had direct primaries for senators in that state. So in a sense, the state legislatures were only given a candidate from each party that they could choose from. So this movement towards democracy is kind of steamrolling towards the Senate. In 1892, the Populist Party, in their Omaha platform, adopted this idea of the 17th Amendment, and the idea keeps going. It was William Jennings Bryan, right, of the Scopes trial, and he ran for president as a Democrat and as a populist, kind of a man of the people. He was a big pusher for the 17th Amendment. And again, the issue was kind of corruption. This is the heyday of the Gilded Age. And if you look at the cartoon, you can see the cartoon right there. The concept is the Senate is being controlled by these special interests, by these monopolies and steel companies and oil barons that have the money in their pockets to kind of buy senators through the state legislatures. There was also this issue of kind of confusion when there was a vacancy. The Constitution directed that the state legislature would just choose the new nominee, the new senator, but a lot of times there was a lot of bickering and fighting, and there would be vacancies for months and months in the Senate. So that's why that second part kind of deals with the idea of filling that vacancy really quickly. So by 1912, 31 states had already asked the federal government to consider the 17th Amendment, and there was kind of a fear, I think, from Congress that if they didn't do anything, there would be a runaway convention. So if you look at Article 5 of the Constitution, you don't even need the federal government. You can bypass the federal government if you get 2/3 of the states to kind of call for an amendment at a convention, and then 3/4 of the states to agree. You could just say, screw you, federal government, we're going to do it anyway. So the federal government, I think, is worried about this kind of runaway convention idea. So they settle down, and by 1913, they bang out the 17th Amendment. And there's really little opposition. There was only a few states that voted against it. So now we have it. Immediately, we see effects. Immediately we see a lot of loss of Republican representation. In some states, not all states, representation is not equal in their state legislatures. They have kind of gerrymandering schemes going on where rural districts are being overrepresented in the state legislatures, so those rural interests are being basically given power to choose their senators. And now when you go to direct democracy, that urban vote, that progressive or more populist vote, is going to be louder. So there's definitely an effect. The effect is going to be more progressivism. The effect is going to be, in a sense, a larger share of power for the federal government, which brings us right up against the roof of the opposition. The opposition, I'm against it now. All right, so let's take a look at kind of the opposition to the 17th Amendment, which exists today amongst some conservatives and Tea Party members and people that see this as an issue in federalism. So shout out to my brother Larry, by the way. So if we look at federalism, right, I'm going to grab a piece of paper here. Now, the basic concept the founders had was that, power would be shared in a sense, kind of like that, where there's a little bit more power here given to the federal government, and that would be Article 6 of the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, that the federal government is the law of the land. But then there's all these other mechanisms, like the 10th Amendment and checks and balances, to make sure that that power is limited to that piece of paper. So in a sense, when we look at Congress, when we look at the Connecticut Compromise, the great compromise that put together Congress, the idea, the basic idea, is that the federal government is kind of represented by the people through the House of Representation, because that's direct democracy. And the Senate is, in a sense, the home of the states, because the state legislatures choose them. So together, they come together. And they make the federal government. So the opposition to the 17th Amendment basically says is you're taking away this piece of paper from the formula. In a sense, what you're doing is you're robbing that state legislature, that state voice, of their rightful position in Congress. And you're basically throwing it to the people, which becomes there's a couple arguments against that. One of them is that that was never the intention, that democracy in a sense can be a bad thing. Mob rule, factions, loud voices, they're temporary and they change quickly. The Senate wasn't supposed to be like that, they would say. The Senate was supposed to be kind of like the wise people on the Hill that would say, chill, people. This is the constitutional right way to move forward. And representing their local interest of their states, they would in a sense be the brake pedal to the gas pedal that the House held. So the argument is, once you change that formula and you make everything nationalized, so when you're running for Senate, you're not running on local issues so much. You're not saying, you know, elect me because I'm going to deal with this issue downstate or upstate. You might say some of that, but you're mostly being asked about national issues, about you know, the economy and foreign policy and these big, big issues, which means that you're representing not the state as much as the federal government. And then we're going to see, according to this argument, more federal intervention, more federal growth. Right? And there's people that are for that. People say that that's necessary sometimes because the states aren't dealing with issues. We need the federal government. And then, of course, that other side is going to be that's tyranny and bang, bang, you have your ideological battle. Another argument is that this is actually in violation of another part of the Constitution. People who are opponents of the 17th Amendment point to the 5th article of the Constitution, the amendment procedure itself. The formula has gone through about how to amend the Constitution. There's actually kind of a little part at the end there that says, don't mess with equal suffrage of the states and the Senate. Don't you mess with that without the state's consent. So there's that argument that some states have not given the consent to the 17th Amendment, so therefore that disallows this idea that we're taking away their equal suffrage. There's people that would say you still have your equal suffrage, but the formula is different. It's direct democracy against indirect democracy.
All right, that's all of it is. So there you go.
Got it. Now let me clarify for you folks really quick here. If you are a registered voter, you are saying you have no rights. You give your rights over to the state corporation, democracy. Democracy, you have no rights. You are a slave. If you are a registered voter, you are saying you don't have rights. You're saying that the state has the dictation rights over you no matter what. Period. End of story. You know, it's like the sovereign citizen movement. Everybody keeps going, oh, yeah, if you're a sovereign citizen. It's like, what morons? Okay, either you're sovereign or you're not. That's why I say stay away from all that crap. Either you're a lawful bloodline native and prove it, or you're a legal citizen and prove it. All right? And this is what's going on right now. This is what people have been paying attention with Donald Trump is coming out right now and stating this in the media. Know your standards. Know your standing when you go to court. Know your standing in this country. Now, it's time for people to start waking up and quit this goddamn bullshit of democracy bullshit. All right? Because this man is sitting there trying to brainwash you. This man don't give a shit about you. He rapes children by allowing democracy to happen. All right? That's what he wants. This is how these people make a living. Remember, their living is more important than your children. Their security is more important because he's an educator. He's a teacher. He's a structure. He don't give a shit about you. All right? Let's be honest about it. He don't give a shit about you. You know? So that is the one thing that you've got to pay attention. You know? And so when you sit there and you go through these things and you're sitting there going through these process, that's what's doing you wrong. Because now you're accepting that you have no rights. You know, that's the one thing. Since the 13th Amendment, all the other amendments from now on are under administrative rule. When he keeps talking federal government, he's talking the British government. Remember, British government. And he talks about the Constitution. He's talking British Constitution. He ain't talking about your American Constitution of rights. He's talking about privileges. Literally privileges. Okay? He already sold his soul. All right? He gets a paycheck for selling his soul. He's doing this commentary for this series for dummies, and he's making a living off of you for doing this. He is making a living to tell you how stupid you are. He's making a living to prove you're stupid because you're going along with democracy. And it's proven. Now, either you have a right or you don't have a right. You have a right privilege or you have a right privilege. Okay, and if you paid the system in it, you have a paid privilege. All right, and so that way you have to know the structure what you're doing. It's like taxes are voluntary. You don't pay for labor. And these morons, like this guy here is a moron, tells you, well, you need to pay taxes. You need to pay this, and you need to pay the corporation. Well, remember, the Senate and House, and he keeps saying that this was a unanimous vote. No, it was not. He even brought up the point that most states didn't agree with it, but when you got a gun to your head in the 1800s, who are you going to tell? I mean, come on, people. Open your mind. Be realistic. Stop living this fantasy shit people are living in. And once we start living in fantasy and start realizing back in the 1800s, when somebody's got a gun to your head, it's the same thing that you're living right now today. If a cop's got a gun to your head, oh, shit, well, you're going to confess to anything. How many people in jail right now that confess to crimes that they didn't do? So focus on what the truth is. Focus on the facts of what we're living today. And quit going off on these tangents. Okay, because democracy doesn't give you any rights. You are a slave. So if you're a registered voter, you are telling the Senate and House that I pay your debts, that I will murder my children for you to pay your debts. And that goes all the way back to Roman law, canon law. I will murder my children for you to pay the Roman debt. And that's a reality. We all know it. We watch it on TV. It's been in how many movies over the years? You know, let's be realistic. Let's come back to reality. Let's talk about reality. Let's quit living in fantasy. You know, and that's the one thing, you know, I mean, I look at the grace because it's like I've been in and out of the hospital since realistically last July. Basically, I've what they call, I guess, you know, basically suffocated and died or whatever. But I'm still here. So, and that's the point of getting the knowledge out so that way you stop being a slave. And the point is to start working together with one another. And quit this shit. Either you are an American or get the hell out of our country. If you come from another country and you want us to do your Cinco de Mayo bullshit, we are not a Mexican structure. This is America. And all these new holidays are Islam, and who cares about Israel and Islam? What the hell does that have to do with the United States? Doesn't. You know, they want you to fund Israel. What? Are we morons paying for another country to sit on our ass? And that's what it comes down to. We're paying these people to do nothing, and you're giving your children your assets up for their personal financial gain. And step out and look at this stuff. I mean, today, you know, some of the states are saying that if you collect rainwater, we're going to murder you. And so people have been actually murdered for collecting rainwater. People have been murdered for driving down the road. People have been murdered for farting in a classroom. Well, not quite murdered, I know of that one, but I know that kids who have been extremely assaulted, handcuffed, and publicly paraded for farting in a classroom because it's called offensive odor. So you fart. Oh, shit, everybody has those moments. So now everything that we do is offensive. And that's what democracy is all about. We can tell you how to live. We can fart in the wind, but only we can fart. You can't fart. You know, so this Hughes guy is putting all this crap out, you know, and I've put a challenge out to him a couple of times, you know, hey, let's do a debate. The man is a pussy. He doesn't have the courage to debate the truth because he knows he would lose. The Constitution is cut and dry. I even have the affidavit from the Queen of England. It's been posted. I even paid for it in the mainstream media to have it posted. I publicly did it in the House and Senate of the Oregon State House and Senate to make sure that the stamp on the instrument I got is legally and lawfully the Queen of England stamp. It was put in the newspaper. Nobody ever disagreed with me. Not one individual. The House and Senate didn't even disagree with me. So when these things are, you know, the point where you're not being disagreed with, and the evidence is sitting right there for you to learn and to live the real truth, instead of lying to yourself, instead of lying to your children, instead of putting your children as the victim. But see, you got to remember, everybody's got to play the victim because that's how they make a living. It's a tax write-off. Drug and alcohol programs, tax write-off. See, that is the one thing that is, everybody keeps attacking Trump. Now they want to try to attack Trump on arm rights. Get off your goddamn ass and stand up for your rights to arm. I don't give a shit if you believe in arms or not. I don't think if you believe that somebody else has a right to own an arm. I don't care what you think about that. It's my right, right? I haven't committed harm, so why should I be penalized? And that has to be done by individual circumstances of the case of the criminal activity. And comprehend a criminal activity, not a statute, code, administrative rule. Wake up, people. Like the United States, Inc. is owned by the British government. The Bankruptcy Act of 1933. The Bankruptcy Act was bankrupt by the British government to you, the people of the lawful country. When he's trying to tell you that the federal government is the law of the land, he goddamn lies to you. He goddamn lies to his children. He steals from his children because he does file tax returns. If he's got children, he files tax returns on them, rapes them for their future money instead of protects them from their money. This idiot out there doesn't even want to tell the truth to the general public. And that's the thing that gets to us when we got people like this. And see, this is your responsibility as a lawful bloodline native. It's your responsibility as an immigrant to either stand up for this country and do this country the way it's supposed to be. Either you protect it or you don't. If you don't like it, get the hell out of our country. And everybody going, no, the country's supposed to be open to the world. No, you can take that religious crap from the Pope and take it back to Italy. Yes, I have filed on the Pope and the Vatican Soul. Yes, it's recorded, including filed in downtown London at sewer and water. It is filed, and it's filed in the, what do they call that? The Queen's Palace, because I did send a certified registered memorial over there. So it's been filed. It's there. I keep telling people, go prove me wrong. Go prove me wrong. Nobody has been able to prove me wrong. Because I'm not sitting there and doing this for financial gain. It's not a financial purpose. The purpose is either you have a right or you don't. Immigration have privileges, but it's our responsibility to protect their right of their privilege so long as they're paying the administrative rules. And that's their job, is to pay the administrative rules. See, once you start stepping out of the movie and you start putting all this stuff together, and you got these hypocrites out there like this guy, lying to the public so that way he can keep you in the system because he don't give a shit about his own children. He makes a living off it. There's been so many people I have gone out and put debate challenges out to. Literally, a lot of these people. And all these people, they don't want to challenge me because they know that they'll lose. They come out with all this crap to the general public, and let's go debate it. I want to talk about the Constitution. Now, he's talking about the 17th Amendment. Nobody wanted to pass it, but when you got a gun to your head, and you got to remember the time and the era of these things, and the education that was given to the general public at this time. Because the general public didn't have education. They didn't. Their education was dirt soil. They knew how to, skin a deer and elk. They knew how to fish and hunt and how to survive. That was their education. Now, today we brainwash and we force people into conforming into what we think is the way we're supposed to live, or civilization. We need to be civilized. Who the hell says that? That's the same thing we're still living today, just with the Catholics that came over from England that stole the Indians, murdered the Indians, raped the Indians. And we're still dealing with that today. So that is the point. We're still dealing with this stuff today, and you're or the problem or the solution. So as soon as you admit that to yourself, that you are the problem or the solution, then that way we can move forward. But until you admit to your own self, it ain't going to work. And anybody who speaks against this right to your rights to arms, okay, they're lying to you. Because it's like the right to travel. You have a right to travel. I've proven this through the Oregon State House and Senate. That's why I keep getting attacked, because if I keep telling the truth, oh my God, we can't keep telling the truth on this stuff. And so that's why I suggest people go to new.org and trackers, read this stuff. You know, and that's the one thing I'm going to be trying to work on, putting a package together and get that out public here pretty soon. Because people have got to start standing up and doing this. Because if you don't protect your children, and you have the right to religion, okay, nobody can stand in your way to it. But don't sit there and say the Constitution is beneath religious. Because without the Constitution, you have no religious right to your belief. And the Constitution is what our forefathers put in place, not the British democracy. It's called a republic form of government. Republic form of government. And as soon as you start waking up to the real truth of what a republic form of government, that means you have to be personally responsible, personally respectful. And this is the one thing that, you know, everybody's bitching about the government shut down. Shut the goddamn thing down. Because as soon as we shut down 60%, 40% of the government today, oh, you're going to watch the immigrations leave from this country. You're going to watch the truth of this structure coming through, the truth come out. And that's what we want, the truth. We don't want this hearsay shit. We don't want opinions, because opinions are diapers like anything else. They need to be changed regularly. And that is the one thing you've got to start standing up for this stuff. Quit lying to your children. Oh, there's a start. We start educating our children, we don't have the issues. Give them the knowledge. You give them the information. Let them learn. Let them make the best decisions for themselves. And then you'll find out that you'll see a lot of these things are coming truthful and factual. And it starts becoming where it starts being rational and realistic. Because, see, I mean, we sit there, we destroy ourselves before we even get started. And that is the problem that we're living. You know, and then we get the other point where everybody's got their hearsay point of views. You don't want to be in a hearsay. You want to talk facts. If you talk about this country, you want to talk in this country of facts. And so long as that we are talking in facts and protecting ourselves, this is how we're going to survive. This is what we're living our children to grandchildren. And this is if you're a legal immigrant, you want to set it up so that way you're putting your paperwork and you're setting it up on the fifth generation. They have the right to own their land. They don't pay taxes. And this way it's clearly set up to protect them. And that is your responsibility to protect them, not the government, because the government is we the people. Look in the mirror. It's your responsibility as the government. We have elected and public employees, and we have to make sure that elected and public employees do their servitude. And once they do the servitude, now we can start getting some things accomplished. You know, once we start doing that, then we're going to be succeeding in so many other ways. You know, and you know, it's like everybody's going off on different issues. Quit going off on different issues. You know, the 17th Amendment was put in place so that way you can argue, so you could fight with your family. They did this called divide and conquer. You see how simple it is? They divided you and conquered you. And that's what they're doing right now today, and they're getting away with it. So it's up to you to start standing up and for you to start putting these structures together. It's up to you to stand up for your bloodline and for our country. See, and if you don't stand up for your country, nobody else is going to do that. And so when we start talking about these amendments and what goes on, that is what we got to do, is participate. You know, if there's an affidavit out there that you need to support it. Write your own affidavit. Okay, but you have to make sure it's certified. You have to make sure it's copied. You have to make sure it's presented. And when you do your certifications, that you have to make sure your certifications are publicized on public bulletin boards, the county commissioner meetings, the cities and counties. So once they're publicized in the cities and counties and all this stuff where nobody can sit there and deny it. And the only way it's going to happen if we sit there and protect our public servants. See, we have elected and public servants. It's our job to protect them as well. And once we start doing that, then we can get back into protecting our country. I mean, it's like you go through this, it's like people don't realize. I mean, Judge Scalia was murdered. How come a lot of stuff ain't protecting Judge Scalia? You know, and the other thing that gets to me, there's a lot of people post a lot of stuff out there, and it's like, get to know what the truth is. Getting to know what the facts are. So when you sit there and you go, I'm going to vote for this, or I'm voting for a tax increase, it's like Oregonians got screwed this last election. Literally screwed. Because they said that the Oregonians voted in all these new tax increases. All these new tax increases. I don't know anybody who wrote in $6 billion and then put a 40% tax on their business and say they don't have rights of business and the state could come in and take their business. And that's what we're living right now today. So what do you want? Do you want rights or privileges? And if you're an immigrant, you have privileges, but how do you become, for your rights? Pay your structure. Public employees have to go by what they're paid on. And then everybody goes, oh, well, you need to file your 1099s or your 10Ds forms and stuff. I disagree with that, to stay out of the system of that. You don't want to get your information. And remember, your Social Security number, if you give it out, it's a crime. You could personally go to jail for giving that number out. I support that. Because Social Security numbers are not used for identification. That is to use for our benefits. All right? Oh, wait a minute. Wrong word. Oh, if you're a lawful bloodline American and Native, you have entitlements. It's not a benefit that they want to convince you of today. So know the separation of entitlement, right, and benefit. And so when we step out of these movies and watch the productions of these stuff and how these amendments have been passed, because you got to remember, the British government and the Spain government is still pissed off because we ended up with a constitution that went out to the world that everybody agreed to. Never been done before. Even the Canadian Constitution was done, in 1992, I think it was. Okay? It's not like the Constitution of our founding structure. It's administratively done and was done through the British government. Canada is the British government. So when you step out of the movie, you see the production. That's why I always suggest that, step out of the movies, watch the production, watch the movies, watch what's in the movies, watch the walls, the backgrounds, watch the subliminal messages, watch the flags that are off of the buildings and the paintings that are on the buildings. They all have a message, a psychological message to put to you to make you think or program you. It's that simple. So the 17th Amendment gave the corporation privileges. And the only ones that technically can vote is corporation members, and that is elected and public employee union members, registered church owners and members, and all immigration. Lawful bloodline Americans and natives do not have a right to vote. You could go to prison for that, and you don't want to set yourself up to do that. And people are going to prison right now on voting structures, and people wondering why, but it's not being publicized in the media. You wonder why? Because they don't want you to know the truth. Because if you knew the truth of what was going on in your circumstances, half the voting wouldn't happen. I mean, come on, how many people would vote for, the state of Oregon is a no-tax state. We have a treaty with the British government, a Constitution treaty, 1846. We're not supposed to pay taxes. And then people says, we can vote it and amend it and change it. No, the Constitution was set up so it can't be voted on. But if you believe it's a democracy, you could destroy your family with a democracy. If you believe it's a republic, all right, the law of the land. Okay, because when he talks about this, you guys talks about, the federal government has the right. No, it's called the Constitution. So he should be saying the Constitution is the law of the land, not the federal government. The federal government is the British government. Federal government is British, not American. And once you guys realize that the British government is not your friend, okay, I mean, look at American Got Talent, American Britain's Got Talent. They got all these new programs up there that's bringing all this stuff. All the late night talk shows are all from England and all from Canada. Where are the Americans, man? They're brainwashing you, but you're gullible. You'll buy and sell your kids off so cheap. And it's sad because when you sit there and you fill out a form and you put your information of your children on that form, you're selling your children. And they know it by the highest bidder, and that's how they do the bidding process. And that goes to the stock exchange because it's on the birth certificate bond. Everybody knows that. Anybody who's been around the block knows that that's the circumstances. And they rate that. And they know that. And they know how gullible we are. And people are this gullible of what goes on. So how are you going to protect your family? How are you going to protect your citizens? Okay? And I'm not talking citizens in the low C, the large C citizen. Okay? And that was the one thing that when the 14th Amendment was passed, it was passed not to give you rights. It was passed to give you privileges. I mean, the other thing that pisses me off, is Prager University. They lie. They want to keep you in the system so they can keep their funding going. Remember, they get funding by you. Okay? You pay it out of your taxes. That is the point. And when you pay this stuff out of your taxes, you saying that you don't have rights. You give your rights to these men and women. And that is the point that you're screwing these people over. You're screwing your children open. And as soon as we stop doing that, we can start getting that. And then when it comes down to when they put out this shit about ending slavery, they didn't end slavery with the 14th Amendment. It was never passed. It was never ratified. But when they did the 14th, go ahead.
You say that everybody pays that through taxes. Where do the taxes go? Because they sure the hell don't come back here to America.
Oh, that's true. Good point. Your taxes, when you pay your state and federal income and property taxes, it goes to Italy. It goes to the Roman Catholic Church. It goes to the Queen of England, paying off the so-called debt. And this is the one thing that solely disturbs me, because you got all these people out there running like Prager University, putting out these videos that's trying to convince you of these things that sound good. That's why here's the point on your taxes. All right, a new court case just came out. A new court case, December 20th, 2018. Ryan McCank, M-C-A-K-E-N, wrote this article that the police have no duty to protect you at all. And I'm writing this up. I'll have this out through date. I'm glad that the Great Spirit's got me going on this path so I get this out. And this is the one thing that the police department are revenue collectors. They are there for their own personal financial gain. Now, we do have laws that they're supposed to protect us, so we have administrative rules what they're supposed to do. But the only way they're going to do that if we enforce it on them. Otherwise, we need to shut them down. The sheriff's department. The sheriff has a duty so long as he takes an oath of office. But his government agency has no duty. So when he sits there and sends deputies out that are not sworn in lawfully, not legally, big difference. So your money goes to a foreign country. And that's like the stock exchange when you get a traffic ticket. All right, that goes to the New York Stock Exchange. So all that information is passed around through them back door, and they know who you are. And when they come up and they tell you, a cop will say, well, I don't know who you are because it doesn't show up on my computer, and we have to protect your rights. That's a goddamn lie. They know who, what, why, and how. And so this court case came out dealing with the shooting in Florida with the children out there. Because the sheriff has no duty to protect the kids. Police department has no duty to protect their kids. This is the new court decision from Parkland, Florida, with the police departments. Wake up. It's your duty to protect your family. It's our duty to protect our neighbors and friends. Because if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. And that is the thing that we have to live right now today of what the circumstances are. So either you have a constitutional right, and you need to stand up that collectively, or you have a constitutional privilege that you need to comprehend and learn how to protect your bloodline in the future. And that's the same thing that we need to do on both sides of the coin here. But the point is that we have to come back to the realization that we have to protect the Constitution, because the Constitution gives you freedom. Religion does not. You know, and so I'm not picking on religion when it really comes down to it, but the bottom line comes down, without the Constitution, you have no religious rights. So once you get rid of all that stuff, you lose everything. You lose all your rights. You lose everything collectively. And so that's the one thing you've got to wake up, that if you give up one thing for another, what do you end up with? You know, so that's the one thing. You know, you have life in the hand or shit in the hand. And so it's making a decision of what direction that you need to think about, your structure of what direction you're going to go to, how you're going to handle these circumstances, how you're going to handle these positions. And those are things that you need to sit down, especially with your children, and sit down and talk to them. Give them this knowledge. You know, I suggest instead of turning on a TV, some laptop, or video games, sit down, play cards with your kids and have conversations. Play board games with them. Open their mind. Learn how to open their minds and for their minds to be utilized. And once their minds can be utilized and they start thinking, and that's what we got to do to ourselves. Most people don't think today. They're so programmed. You react 99% of the time. You react without thinking. Think about it. Oh, interesting. So if you're not reacting, then you have time to think. Then you can sit there and rationally do things. And that's what you want. And we'll get this other new court case with Parkland, Florida up, where they admit it. The cops and the sheriffs have no duty to protect you. Now, I ran that story last year where I was able to get the court case. I even proved the Supreme Court even stated that the Sheriff's Department has no duty to protect you. And that was from the Supreme Court to the Sheriff's Department. And it even clearly stated that the sheriff has a duty so long as that he has an oath and protecting the oath. If he doesn't protect the oath, he has no duty. So, I mean, and that's the point. You can't sit there and go like with this Hughes guys, you know, when he's putting this, you know, the Constitution for dummy and try to convince you. It's like the other point is that, you know, and the other video dealing with attorneys. You know, the attorney has the right to protect you, but he tells you you have the right to counsel, but then he's telling you that your counsel is supposed to be attorney. That's bullshit. Your counsel, and if you actually would read the law, says that anybody who has knowledge, it's not knowledge of the law, statute, codes, and administrative rules. Statute, codes, and administrative rules are not laws. So when he's sitting there saying that the Constitution is the law of the land, well, you have to realize this guy is talking the British Constitution. He's not talking. Yeah.
Sorry, he did not say the Constitution was the law of the land. He stated that the federal government was the law of the land.
Thank you. And that's the one point, yes. And when he's saying that the federal government is the law of the land, listen to the liar. Because this man, like I told you, will sell his own children for anything. You know, the federal government is the British government. Wake up. That's called democracy. We are not a democracy. Democracy destroyed even Rome. Look at canon law. Okay. Republic gives you a right. That's why, you know, when a man is being accused of a crime, he has a right to a jury trial. Not a judge. A jury of his peers. That's 6 men and 6 women. Total of 12. Okay, with an alternate, 13, in case somebody comes sick or something. And technically, you're supposed to have a backup of 25, just in case there's a retrial. But it's learning how our system works compared to the way these men and women bluntly lie to you because they get a paycheck to lie. And so when you start going along with this, instead of calling these people out on their videos, I mean, I watch a lot of videos with a lot of people around the states here. I watch some from other countries as well, but I watch these people that are still talking to keep you in the system. If you want to be free, you're supposed to be free thinking. So that means it's making a decision, and that means even it might take you to make a week or 2 weeks to make a decision. That's the way it happens. You know, but the thing is take your time on your decisions. You have to look at these things to be responsible. You can't blame something else. And when you sit there and say the federal government is the entitlement over you, that just told you right there that you're telling yourself you have to ask permission to go to the toilet. And that's exactly what it means. You're asking permission to go potty for everything you do. So don't put yourself in that position. And that's the one thing, you know, like I said, I put many challenges out to Hughes. I put a lot of things on his Facebook walls. I put some things on his YouTube channels challenging him. I put the laws that when he was putting different things or quoting different things with other amendments. And now, you know, here's the law. Here's the structure. Do I get a response back? No. I've had some of my stuff deleted from his YouTube channel because, oh, my God, we can't tell the truth. Lying, cheating, and stealing is democracy. They can't make a living. They can't make a living off of drug and alcohol programs and counseling. It's all bullshit anyways. If you want to be a drug addict and alcoholic, choose. Hey, great. But don't sit there and whine to the rest of the world because you're not responsible. Learn to be responsible, then you can whine. But until you're responsible, you have no place to speak. So this is what disturbs me about it. And so, like I said, and the other point is, you know, it's been interesting. I've been going up and down with a lot of serious medical issues. And, you know, but I'm still here. You know, I mean, I don't go in like everybody else and program and sign these things and stuff. It's like, hey, learn how to talk to your public servants. Learn how to talk to them. Don't be disrespectful. You don't want somebody to be downplaying you, to be disrespectful to you, call you names like a little child, and treat you like a little child. So quit acting like one, and you won't be treated like one. And once you start educating yourself in responsibility and start talking, you know, what the law is. Remember, law is Constitution. Statute, codes, and administrative rules are corporation structures that you're asking permission for employment or whatever else. I mean, it's like today, the unemployment insurance fund. Now they're going and setting everybody out to get a job. So you're asking unemployment to get you a job. I mean, yeah, I've been unemployed before, but I never went to the state and asked them to get me a job. Hell no. I got off my lazy ass, went to a business and said, hey, do you need this, that, or the other? When I was a mechanic, I went to a shop and said, here's my qualifications. Oh, you're not ASA certified, so we can't hire you. And I said, fine. But I'm not going to go get a state permission to have a job. I mean, that's the one thing when I was an auto mechanic. I had certifications from the manufacturers, from the manufacturer that built the cars themselves. I went through their training, their structures. I wouldn't go to a state school. I wouldn't play the other games and asking permission for a job. I won't do that. That way, if I ask permission for a job, that means I have to go in the tax structure, and I'm not going to pay the taxes. Because under federal and state law, taxes are voluntary because you don't pay taxes on your labor. And people beat it all the time in court. And I've had people say, well, you can't do that. And, you know, you better be careful. You're going to go to jail. Well, it really disturbs me when people put that fear into people because they do that for their own personal and public employment circumstances. They're not doing it to protect you. They're not doing it to protect anybody else. And so that is the point we are truly living today of the hell. And you talk about living in hell? Come on, think about it. You know, basically we're living today where we have no rights. You know, you have to ask permission, and if you don't ask permission, you can be shot by the cops. You know, that's the one thing. People wake up to the circumstances. You know, and that's the other thing. We got all these other deals out there. You got these nonprofits out there saying, we're going to save your children. Be careful. They use your information, especially when these people tell you, oh, you need to go hire an attorney. Right there, you better be careful. Because if you need to hire an attorney, that says you're not willing to educate yourself. That means you are saying that you are not responsible at all. And see, responsibility comes with responsibility. And so that is the whole point. If you want to get off the tax rolls, you can. And we have the information on new.org and trackers. And we have it on our Facebook sites. And so that's the whole point. Read, education, educate yourself, learn these things. Because once you comprehend the facts, it's like when they say if you collect rainwater, you're going to go to jail. Or you're going to pay erosion tax on your property because your property is eroding, because the soil's eroding. And they do have erosion tax that they put on people's homes. And this is ridiculous. How are you going to have a control over Mother Nature? But then when Mother Nature does a destruction, insurance company says, we don't have to pay. And so you're out. What's the point of paying insurance when they're going to screw you anyways? That's the one thing that is figuring out what the insurance companies are doing correctly. And that is the whole point, is seeing how you correct these problems. There are ways to correct the problems. And the thing is proper education. So once you do that, and, when they try to say you're evading taxes, see, I want to bring up the other point on taxes here. When you do a tax form and you sign on the bottom line and you say, I'm willing to sign my rights away because if I speak up, I can be charged with perjury. Well, yeah, you can be charged with perjury if you are not. Oh, what is that? Oh, because you sign a contract. So you sign in that contract that I under perjury on my income taxes, state or federal income taxes. Why would anybody sit there and do that? Now, you were watching here, and if you're paying attention, you're watching the Democratic Party freaking out across the country right now, especially on borders, especially when Donald Trump came out and said that there's no 14th Amendment. It's administratively passed. And your responsibility as public servants is to honor it. It's like that Kim, what's her name, that wouldn't honor the gay marriages. What bullshit is that? It was administratively passed. She doesn't have a right to her opinion by God. She has a right to do her duty as a public servant. And that is the one thing. If people do that, they pass it by administrative rules, that's her job, that she has to file a marriage license, which I do not recommend anybody doing a marriage license. I'll tell you that right off the bat, because then you're agreeing to pay the privilege of enslavement. And that's exactly what you're doing. And why would you want to do that? So don't agree to these things without knowing what you're agreeing to or what you're putting your livelihood in. What your responsibility is, what you're trying to do. Because you have to stand up. And that is the one thing that people are getting when you're standing up. You are getting the truth of these things. I mean, I put the stuff out dealing with Kate Brown and stuff, about the fraud going on, the circumstances of the fraud. That's why I bring in the structure of these amendments that are destroying you. And people get and destroying families. Everybody gets into arguments. What are people getting in arguments for when they're supposed to be, talking to each other, working with each other, not causing an issue? Everything's about me, when it's like, what's going on with the people around me? What's going on with, in my community? So either you feel that you have a community right, which I don't believe in the word community anyways, because that's another democracy word of telling you what, why, and how. And that's the one thing you don't want. You want to have your rights intact. And so that is the one thing. Once you're doing that, then that way you can start having your freedom. But you have to stand on your freedom. That's like the Federal Reserve, bringing this stuff in and knowing what your obligations are, if you have obligations. So, but anyhow, I don't want to get into, I've already been rambling in a sense. Let's go ahead, open the floor up, see where we're going to go, and then we'll end up probably calling it a night. But I wanted to get in that, I'm still here. I've been, still fighting the medical issues and that, but they haven't succeeded. But I want you to pay attention. The new federal court standard came out and stated, dealing with the Parkland shooting in Florida, cops do not have a right to protect you or your family. Stand up with your neighbors. We have to protect our own neighborhood. And we do that, we'll end up with the cops respecting us, the police department, and then they might start honoring their oath of servitude. But we have to protect them to honor their oath of servitude, so that way we're not being shot and assaulted in the street. So we still got a lot of work that it's our responsibility to make sure that it happens. And we'll get this one posted up with the structure with the parkland on the police department. I knew that this was coming up. This decision was going to come this way, because people are paying attention. People are filing this stuff across the country. They are getting it. And like I said, the police departments are revenue collectors. They have a contract with the city. Okay, now if your city has a contract, and it's up to you as your city to make sure that contract, when the city does a contract, for the police department respect your constitutional rights and amendments. But you have to put that in the city contract, in the city charter. And that's the one thing. Get a copy of your city charter. Read what your city charter says. See what their liability of your city charter is. Excuse me. Once you start realizing that, now you can start standing up. Now we can start making elected and public employees work for us, because everybody keeps going, everything's corrupted. Everything's corrupted. Everything is not corrupted. The only way it's corrupted is because you allow it. And we can stop this. We can stop this within the next 6 months. And things are slowly changing. We all know that. And we need to get the smart meters out for home and a lot of other stuff that's causing the issues and problems. So that is the one thing that once we start doing this, we can change this, and everybody wants to attack climate control. All right, we got this issue with the climate issues, All right, but we got to start it in our own home first. Once we start in our own home, the rest of it, comes out. That's like when people say, obey the law. What law are you talking about? I don't believe in democracy. Never have, never will be. I don't support terrorism, and that's what democracy is. So anyhow, let's open up the floor.
All participants are unmuted.
Anybody would like to add anything? Okay. Well, if nobody's got anything to add, then we'll make it an end. We'll just call it an evening. We appreciate you for joining us. May the Great Spirit and Mother Earth provide more food and shelter for you in life. Because without the Great Spirit and Mother Earth, we have no life. And without the Creator, none of us have anything. And so learn how to hunt and fish. Learn how to take care of your surroundings and prepare yourselves, because we do get into the craziness of, with the so-called, end of the world, or what they try to do to the general public to convince fear in you. Quit running in fear. Learn how to be responsible. Once the responsibility is put in place, that's the one thing I learned from my mom. It's the responsibility. So that's the one thing. Be responsible. And in that way, once you're responsible, you have no issues. So may the Creator bless you and look over you. And may all of us think about what we do, not only to ourselves, but the family members and structures around us.
Thank you for listening to Education with Ed. It is December 23rd. It is currently 6:04 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And everything we show or talk about on this is for educational purposes only. We do not make any funding, finances, or profit of anything off of whatever we show. We are not a monetized channel whatsoever. So any information here is for educational purposes only, and you are free to use. But you take liability for whatever you use, any information that is provided here on this channel. We do not take liability for your actions. With that, hopefully we'll see you next Saturday, or we might be changing things up again, because there's been a lot of people that have started their shows to kind of overlap ours as usual. So
yeah, isn't that interesting? We have a lot of people that are starting new talk shows again on ours trying to come up because, and they threw this out because I'm watching interesting right now on Facebook where so many people just popped up again, and it's like interesting because some of these people I've even had conversations with, oh, we won't be involved on Sunday or Saturday with you, and they always do. So it just shows you that you realize that these men and women are untrustworthy. They lie. They lie to your children, and so that's the problem we have. When are we going to stop lying to the children?
And with that, we'll say goodnight and see you next Saturday.